I'm Bailey Ellis, and the moment my stepmother walked into my 7-figure office and slid a paper across my desk that said, $150,000, due today, my whole body went cold. Not because I was scared of the number, because I recognized her perfume before I even looked up. That sharp, powdery scent that used to fill our kitchen in Jacksonville when she'd stand over me with a red pen, circling receipts like my existence was an expense. She sat down like she owned the place, crossed her ankles, and said, "Family supports family. You owe your roots." My father stood behind her, eyes glued to the carpet like it might swallow him whole, just like he did the night they kicked me out at 17. I didn't sit. I didn't offer water. I didn't smile. I just looked at the numbers she wrote in bold, childish letters and thought, so this is why they came back. 15 years of silence, and now they wanted to cash in on my life. My stepmother leaned forward, voice sweet enough to rot teeth. "Wire it today, and we can put the past behind us." My father cleared his throat. "We drove a long way, Bailey. Just talk to us." And something in me, something that had been trained to swallow rage, swallow tears, swallow every insult so the house could stay peaceful, finally stood up. I picked up that paper. I held it between 2 fingers, and I asked, very calmly, "Do you remember the bus ticket?" My stepmother's smile flickered. My father's shoulders tightened. I watched both of them freeze, the way people do when they realize the person they used to control isn't a child anymore. Then I said, "You didn't raise me. You used me. And you don't get to invoice me for surviving you." She snapped. "Don't you dare talk to me like that in your fancy little office." I tilted my head. "Watch me." And that's when she stood up, voice rising, turning heads outside my glass wall, and hissed, "You're going to regret this. You think you're better than us now?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I pressed the button under my desk and said, "Security, please come to my office." Her eyes went wide. My father whispered, "Bailey, come on." And as the security guard stepped in, my stepmother leaned across my desk with pure poison on her tongue. "You ungrateful woman. After everything we did for you, you're going to throw your own blood out like trash?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "My blood is the reason I survived you, not the reason I owe you." The guards moved in, and as they escorted her out, she screamed one last thing that hit me like a slap and a gift at the same time. "You were nothing without us!" I watched the elevator doors close. Then I sat down for the first time in 5 minutes. My hands were steady. My heart was pounding. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this wasn't over. Because people like Frances don't walk away quietly when they think a woman belongs to them. They come back louder. They come back uglier. They come back in public. And they try to shame you into handing over your peace. But this time, I wasn't 17, and I wasn't alone. Now rewind with me, because if you've ever been the woman who does everything, works harder, stays quieter, gives more, while your family treats you like an endless resource, you're going to recognize every second of what happened next. It started the year my mom died. I was 12. Jacksonville, Florida. A split-level house on the west side where the air always smelled like hot asphalt and somebody's laundry detergent baking in the sun. My mom's name was Dana Ellis. She had this laugh that filled rooms, like she was genuinely surprised life could be good, and she wanted everyone to feel it too. And then one morning, she didn't wake up. A brain aneurysm. Sudden, merciless. No warning, no second chance. One day, she was making pancakes, humming Motown, wiping flour off her cheek with the back of her wrist. The next day, the house was full of strangers, bringing casseroles and speaking in whispers, like volume could change reality. After the funeral, the quiet wasn't just quiet. It was loud. It sat on the couch with us. It slept in her side of the bed. It stared at me from the rocking chair where she used to read Harry Potter until my eyes drooped shut. My dad, Wayne Ellis, did his best. He really did. He worked double shifts at an auto shop on Cassett Avenue, came home smelling like motor oil and exhaust, hands black under the nails like permanent grief. He'd kick off his boots, ruffle my hair, and ask, "How was school, kiddo?" And for a while, it was just us. Two people trying to keep a life afloat after it cracked in half. We ate frozen dinners. We forgot to fold laundry. We watched TV too late because the silence in our bedrooms felt like a punishment. We were messy, but we were a team. And then Frances Lane walked into our lives with a smile that never reached her eyes. Dad met her at a barbecue place near Atlantic Beach, one of those spots with plastic baskets and sweet tea that tastes like syrup. He came home one Sunday and said, "I want you to meet someone." I remember exactly what she wore. A sunflower sundress, lipstick that was too perfect for daylight, and a look that swept over our living room like she was pricing everything. The couch, the pictures on the wall, me. She hugged me immediately and called me sweetie, like she'd practiced the word on the drive over. I didn't know what to do with it, but I saw my dad's face. For the first time in months, he looked lighter, like the weight on his chest had moved just an inch. So I did what girls like me do. I tried. I set the table. I smiled. I told myself it was okay to want my dad to be happy. 2 months later, they got married at the Duval County Courthouse. 15 minutes. A justice of the peace, 2 clerks as witnesses. No reception. No celebration. Just signatures and a new last name on her driver's license like it was a business transaction. She moved in with 3 suitcases, a box of romance paperbacks, and a gray tabby cat that immediately claimed my mom's old rocking chair like it had been waiting. At first, Frances performed trying. She reorganized the pantry with color-coded labels, cooked meatloaf every Wednesday because routine builds character, put up new curtains that smelled like plastic, and she never asked me to call her mom. She didn't have to. She didn't want my love. She wanted my compliance. Dad said, "Give it time, Bailey. Blending families is like breaking in new boots. Uncomfortable at first, worth it in the end." So I gave it time. I folded her laundry into neat squares, fed the cat, did my homework at the kitchen table instead of in my room so I'd look present. I tried to keep the peace because I knew the second I didn't, my dad would get that tired look in his eyes again. And I couldn't bear the thought of being the reason his new light dimmed. But peace didn't last, because Frances wasn't interested in blending. She was interested in controlling. The first thing she controlled was money. She started noticing how expensive everything was. She'd stand at the fridge with the door open, cold air spilling out like an accusation, and announce, "Milk's almost $2 a gallon now," like I was personally draining the dairy industry. Dad would nod, rub the back of his neck, and change the subject to baseball. Then she took over the checkbook. Every receipt got questioned with a red pen. If I needed new sneakers because the soles had holes, she'd hold the box like evidence in court. These cost how much? You'll make do with duct tape. Dad stared at the TV guide, silent. When she decided the house needed to look cleaner, she rearranged everything like our life was a stage set. My mom's oak rocking chair, the one that held bedtime stories, sick days, and whispered promises, got pushed into the garage under a tarp. "It's taking up space," Frances said, dusting her hands. That night, while she was at bingo, I dragged it back inside, muscles shaking, and wedged it beside my bed like a shield. The next morning, it was gone again. I found out later Dad helped her load it into her trunk for goodwill, his arms straining under the weight, refusing to meet my eyes even when I whispered, "Please." I learned something that day. Not about Frances, about my father. Frances could only do what he allowed, and my dad was allowing a lot. I still tried, because that's what girls do when they're afraid of being abandoned. We become useful. I babysat neighbors' kids on weekends, sticky toddlers with cracker crumbs in their hair, brought home $20 in crumpled fives and handed it to Frances like an offering. She took it without a thank you. "Every little bit helps the household," she said, and tucked it into her purse like she was doing me a favor by accepting. I clipped coupons from the Sunday paper with safety scissors, circling deals like a miniature accountant. She inspected them under the kitchen light, crossed off anything frivolous. Name brand cereal? Not necessary. Cocoa Puffs? Sugar rots teeth. Dad ate whatever she put on his plate and thanked her like she was serving steak. By 13, the rules in our house had her name written in permanent marker. Curfew at 8. No phone after 9. Chores posted on the fridge like a diner menu. Scrub toilets. Mop linoleum. Iron Dad's work shirts until the creases could cut glass. Frances watched from the couch, sipping sweet tea through a straw, flipping channels. If I missed a spot, she'd point with her manicured nail and say, "Details matter, Bailey. Sloppy work, sloppy life." Dad started working later. He called it overtime. But I knew what it really was, avoidance. He'd come home after I was in bed, kiss Frances on the cheek, ask what was for dinner. My report card with straight A's sat on the counter like a hopeful dog waiting to be noticed. He'd glance at it, smile weakly, then look at Frances like he needed her approval. She'd say, "Good, but college isn't cheap, and we're not made of money." So I learned to celebrate alone. I taped my report card inside my closet door where nobody could diminish it. One Saturday, I came home and found Frances in my room with drawers yanked open, clothes in piles like my life was being searched. "Spring cleaning," she announced, holding up my favorite hoodie. It had been my mom's. Faded navy, tiny hole at the cuff, soft as forgiveness. "This is ratty trash," Frances said, like she was proud of herself. I grabbed it back so fast my hands shook. She raised an eyebrow. "Possessions don't define you. Let go." That night, I hid it under my mattress. I slept with the fabric against my cheek, breathing in the faint smell of my mom's vanilla lotion, like it could keep me from disappearing. The first time Frances really let her mask slip was a Tuesday in April. I'd aced a history test, 98%, and I came home buzzing, paper clutched like a golden ticket. Dad was in his recliner. Frances perched on the armrest like a gargoyle, showing him paint swatches for the spare room that used to be my mom's sewing nook. "We could turn it into an office for your invoices," she said, tapping a shade called Sea Foam Mist. Dad nodded. I waited for my turn like a child at a grown-up's table. Francis looked over, eyes narrowing. "Bailey, your dad and I are talking budgets." I held up my test. "I got a 1 income," she cut in. 1 child. That's the plan now. Blood or not. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the TV where a muted infomercial sold miracle knives. The silence stretched until it felt thick as the humidity before a storm. My paper crumpled in my fist. Frances smiled like she'd won something. "Self-reliance builds character," she said. "You'll thank me later." From there, the house got colder, literally. She set the thermostat lower to save electricity. She tracked every dollar like a hawk. At dinner, she'd pull out the grocery receipt and circle items in red pen. Apples, yogurt, even off-brand mac and cheese. Then she'd slide it toward me. $2 for apples. We could skip fruit this week, and your thighs would thank us." My dad would chew slower, eyes locked on his plate, fork scraping ceramic like it was counting down seconds. I'd nod and promise to eat less, to pack carrot sticks, to be smaller, quieter, cheaper. School projects became negotiations. I needed poster board for a science fair volcano. $3. Frances held the money between 2 fingers like it might bite. "Blood ties don't pay for extras. Earn it." So I mowed Mrs. Henderson's lawn next door for $5. Came home sweaty and proud, grass stains on my sneakers. Frances took 4. "The house needs detergent." Handed me back 1. "For your trouble." Birthdays vanished. Mine hit in April. No cake, no card, no off-key singing. Dad forgot until Frances mentioned, "It's just another day on the calendar." I baked brownies from a mix using one of my mom's old recipe cards, then shared them with neighbors who said, "Happy birthday," like it mattered. Frances complained about the calories and asked if I'd calculated the cost of cocoa powder. Dad smiled apologetically, but said nothing. That was the pattern. I reached, Frances took. Dad watched. And I learned that love in that house was measured in what you could provide. So I became a provider. At 14, I got my first job at a fast food place off Atlantic Boulevard, the one with the busted neon "open" sign, where only the O and the N lit up. Weekends from 4 to close, flipping burgers in a polyester uniform that smelled like grease and regret. My first paycheck was $87 after taxes. I counted it 3 times, heart racing like it was fortune. I handed it to Frances under the flickering kitchen light. She counted it twice, slow and deliberate. "This helps with the electric bill," she said. "Keep it up, kiddo." Dad ruffled my hair once and muttered, "Proud of you." So low I almost missed it. Then he followed her into the living room, where a laugh track filled the spaces he refused to fill. Frances's comments sharpened like kitchen knives. "That shirt is cute, but blood doesn't buy fashion. Save your money for college applications. We're not a charity, Bailey." Eventually, utility bills started arriving in my name, for practice. I paid the water bill with burger money, $23.42. Frances taped the receipt to the fridge with a magnet that said, Bless this mess. See, she told my dad, responsibility in action. I was a child, paying bills, so the adults could feel righteous. And Dad, he let it happen. His silence became a fog that settled over everything. If I tried talking to him alone, like in the garage while he changed spark plugs, Frances would appear with a laundry basket and say, "Family discussions happen together." Then she'd speak for both of them. One evening, after a double shift, legs aching like I'd run a marathon, I came home to Frances at the kitchen table with a calculator and a yellow legal pad. "Sit," she said. She pushed a homemade spreadsheet toward me. Columns for rent, groceries, utilities. My share circled in red like a target. "Even blood costs money," she said. "Wayne can't carry it all forever." Dad stood behind her, arms crossed, staring at the floor. I waited for him to argue, to say, "She's a kid," to say, "This is my daughter." Instead, he shifted his weight from one boot to the other. That movement, the same movement I would watch 15 years later in my office, made my stomach drop, because it told me the truth. He wasn't going to save me. Not then, not ever. I started eating at work to save money. Free employee meals, packed lunches in brown bags, peanut butter sandwiches cut diagonally like my mom used to. My tiny act of rebellion. Frances noticed and nodded approval. Smart, less strain on the pantry. Then came the thing that broke me. It was summer break before senior year. I'd saved $200 in tips, hidden in an envelope inside my sock drawer. It wasn't for clothes. It wasn't for fun. It was for my future. A community college brochure sat beside it, corners worn from being unfolded and refolded, like hope itself was getting tired. Frances found it while organizing. She held the envelope up like a trophy. "This could cover car insurance for a month," she said, and pocketed it before I could even process what was happening. I stared at her, then at my father. He stood in the hallway, and he did what he always did when he knew something was wrong, but didn't want conflict. He rubbed the back of his neck until the skin turned raw. That night, Frances cornered me in the laundry room, between the humming dryer and the ironing board. "We're not a charity, Bailey," she said again, but this time her voice was colder. "Wayne's blood or not, we can't keep funding your future. Frankly, it's time you learn the real world doesn't hand out free rides." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just asked, "So what am I supposed to do?" Frances's eyes narrowed, like she'd been waiting for the moment I admitted I needed anything. "You're supposed to stand on your own." And then she smiled, because she knew I couldn't. Not at 17. Not in that house. Not without my father's protection. And that's when she made her move. The day she decided I would be standing on my own was a Friday evening. I remember because it smelled like rain and fryer oil. I just finished a shift. I pushed through the front door and heard the garage light buzzing. Frances stood in the garage with her arms folded tight across her chest like a bouncer. Dad lingered behind her, hands shoved in his work jeans pockets. The overhead fluorescent light flickered, casting harsh shadows on the oil-stained floor. Frances pointed to a duffel bag by the workbench. My old one from summer camp, zipper half busted. "Pack what fits," she said. "You're leaving tonight." My mouth went dry. "What? Why now?" "I've discussed this with your father," she snapped, stepping closer. Get out of my house. I swear my whole vision tunneled. I looked at my dad. He wouldn't look back. Dad? My voice cracked like glass. Say something. His boots scuffed the concrete. He shifted his weight, and he stayed silent. I reached for his oil-stained sleeve. I begged. I cried. I promised I'd work more shifts, cover everything, give them my paychecks, anything, just don't make me leave. Dad flinched, like my hands burned him. Then he pulled away gently and shook his head once. The motion was so small I almost missed it, but it was enough, because it was his decision. Francis shoved a suitcase at me, the one with the broken wheel. Clothes, toothbrush, that's it. The rest stays. It's house property now. My hands trembled as I stumbled to my room. I stuffed jeans, t-shirts, the hoodie I'd hidden. Francis hovered in the doorway, foot tapping faster. Bus leaves in 40 minutes, she said, like she was talking about a movie schedule. Back in the garage, she fished a bus ticket from her purse, like a magician revealing a final card. One way, 90 kilometers south. Destination, St. Augustine. Your aunt is expecting you, she said. Don't miss it, or you'll be sleeping on the street. My dad took the suitcase, loaded it into her trunk, not once meeting my eyes. I whispered, Dad, this is my home. Mom's pictures are still on the walls. He opened the car door for me. His eyes were glassy. I couldn't tell if it was tears or relief. Francis slid into the driver's seat, engine already running. Move, she said. Clock's ticking. The ride to the Greyhound station was 10 minutes of silence thicker than Florida humidity. At the curb, hazards blinking, Dad handed me the duffel. He slipped a 20 into my palm. That was his grand gesture, his one act of fatherhood that night. Then Francis revved the engine impatiently. I boarded the bus with minutes to spare. The bus smelled like vinyl, stale coffee, and the ghosts of 1,000 journeys. I sat near the back, ticket crumpled in my fist like a lifeline. As Jacksonville's lights shrank behind me, the shock wore off, and the pain came in like a wave. I pressed my forehead to the cool window. Rain started halfway, fat drops splattering the glass. The wipers swiped in hypnotic rhythm. I watched mile markers climb like a countdown, and I whispered to the darkness, I'm never going back. It tasted like a promise and a threat. Because the thing no one tells you when you're the girl who gets used is this. They don't think you'll leave. They don't think you'll survive. They definitely don't think you'll thrive. And if you do, they come back. Not to apologize, to collect. St. Augustine's bus station was dim and quiet. A single clerk behind bulletproof glass, chewing gum like it was a chore. I hauled my bags off, legs numb, duffel strap cutting into my shoulder. Headlights swept the empty lot. Then a familiar sedan pulled up. My aunt, my mom's younger sister, Dana Moss. She stepped out in flannel pajamas and a yellow raincoat, curls escaping her ponytail. When she saw me, her face changed, like she already knew everything without being told. She rushed over and wrapped me in a hug that smelled like lavender soap and safety. You're here, she whispered. You're safe now, sweetheart. No lecture, no ledger, no red pen. Just arms around me while my whole body shook from shock and exhaustion. She took the duffel without asking and guided me to the car like I was made of glass. As we drove through rain-slick streets lined with palms and Spanish moss, I looked back through the rear window. Jacksonville's glow vanished behind us, and for the first time since my mom died, I felt something that wasn't grief. I felt possibility. But possibility is fragile when you've been trained to feel guilty for needing anything. And I didn't yet understand the real damage Frances had done. She didn't just take money. She rewired my brain. She taught me that love was conditional, that rest was laziness, that my worth was measured by what I produced for other people. So when I finally found a place that felt safe, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I overworked. I overgave. I tried to earn my right to exist. And that pattern, that's what followed me into adulthood. That's what made me successful. And that's what almost destroyed me. Because the part of my story no one sees when they look at the ocean view balconies and the staff of 12 and the fancy espresso machine is the part where I still flinched at the sound of a calculator, the part where I still apologized for taking up space, the part where I still believed, deep down, that if I didn't keep proving my value, someone would decide I was too expensive to keep. So, yeah. When Frances walked into my office 15 years later and demanded $150,000 like I was still her personal savings account, it wasn't just a family drama moment. It was the collision of my past and my present. It was the day the girl I used to be finally got to speak. And in part 2, I'm going to show you exactly how I built my life from that bus ticket forward, and how my family's entitlement didn't stop at my stepmother's demand. Because my father didn't just stay silent back then. He stayed silent for 15 years, until the day he realized what I had built without him. And he decided he deserved a piece of it. And when I tell you what they tried next, you'll understand why I didn't just say no. I made sure they could never ask again. I didn't realize how much damage that house had done to me until I lived somewhere safe. Aunt Dana's place was small, a 2-bedroom bungalow near the historic district in St. Augustine, with creaky floors and a porch that caught the late afternoon sun. But it felt unreal, like I was trespassing in someone else's kindness. The first night, she didn't ask questions. She didn't sit me down and demand explanations. She didn't say, "What did you do to deserve this?" like Frances always did. She just handed me a towel, pointed to the shower, and said, "Hot water's already running." I stood under that shower for so long, my fingers wrinkled. I let the water beat against my back until the smell of fryer oil and fear finally washed away. When I came out, there were clean sheets on the bed and a glass of milk on the nightstand. Milk. No comments about cost, no size, no red pen. That night, I slept like someone who wasn't waiting to be kicked out. But safety didn't erase the programming overnight. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, heart racing, convinced I'd overslept and ruined everything. I made my bed tight enough to bounce a quarter. I washed the dishes that weren't mine. I kept apologizing for existing. Dana noticed. Of course she did. "Bailey," she said gently while pouring coffee, "you don't have to earn your keep here." I laughed like it was a joke. Inside, my chest tightened, because every cell in my body believed that wasn't true. The first week, I enrolled at the local high school. New paperwork, new locker, new stairs. I was the girl who came from nowhere, with thrift store clothes and a quiet voice. At lunch, I sat under an oak tree with Spanish moss dangling like loose threads from the sky. I ate peanut butter sandwiches alone and tried not to take up space. That's when Leah Morales sat down across from me without asking. She had sharp eyes, chipped nail polish, and the confidence of someone who'd never been told she was a burden. "You look like you could use a friend," she said, biting into an apple. "I'm Leah. Math's my thing. You?" "History," I said automatically. She grinned. "Perfect. We'll trade." That was the beginning of something I didn't know I was allowed to have. Not a transaction, not an obligation, a friendship. At home, Dana worked brutal nursing shifts at Flagler Hospital, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. She came home exhausted, feet swollen, shoulders tense. So I cooked, not because I was told to, but because I wanted to contribute without being asked. Spaghetti, tacos, stir-fry. She'd slide a $20 bill next to the coffee pot and say, "Gas money," like it wasn't a big deal. I saved it anyway. Old habits die hard. I worked weekends at a beachside cafe pouring lattes for tourists in flip-flops who complained about foam ratios. Weekdays, I stocked shelves at a souvenir shop selling keychains and alligator heads. Tips went into a mason jar labeled "Future" in Dana's handwriting. Not rent, not utilities, not my share. Future. Senior year came fast. Scholarship applications piled up on the kitchen table. Dana typed essays on her ancient Dell computer that sounded like it might lift off. Leah proofread everything twice, sometimes 3 times. The acceptance letter came on thick ivory paper. Full ride, State University, marketing major. Dana cried like it was her own victory. She framed the letter and hung it next to her nursing degree. "You're going to build something," she said. "I can feel it." College was the first time I realized how dangerous my work ethic was. I didn't just work hard. I worked like my survival depended on it. Early classes, late shifts at the campus bookstore, group projects where I did more than my share because saying no felt unsafe. Professors praised me. Employers relied on me. Friends joked, "Bailey's got it covered." And every compliment felt like oxygen, because deep down, I still believed the lie Francis drilled into me. If you stop producing, you stop mattering. Junior year, I landed an internship at a small agency in Gainesville. My first presentation boosted client sales 20% in 1 quarter. The owner hugged me with tears in his eyes and offered part-time pay and a corner desk. I didn't celebrate. I asked what else I could do. That summer, I freelanced on a second-hand MacBook fueled by Red Bull and fear. Leah handled design. We split fees 50-50 and celebrated with cheap tacos like we'd won the lottery. Graduation day came. Dana sat front row, clapping louder than anyone when my name echoed across the arena. Leah snapped photos with her DSLR, tears streaking her mascara. I walked across that stage debt-free. Free. I should have felt light. Instead, I felt pressure. Because now, there were no excuses. If I failed, it would be because I wasn't good enough, not because anyone held me back. So I didn't fail. I rented a tiny office above a coffee shop on Hippolyta Street. Exposed brick, leaky ceiling. One client, a bed and breakfast struggling to compete with Airbnb, I over-delivered. Word spread. I hired Maria, then Leah, then more. Revenue doubled, then tripled. By 25, I had 10 staff, steady contracts, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. A custom espresso machine sat in the break room like a trophy. From the outside, it looked like success. Inside, I was still that 17-year-old counting dollars, waiting for someone to tell me I was too expensive to keep. Then the letter came. Plain white envelope, Jacksonville postmark, my father's handwriting. Apologies, updates, nostalgia. Your family misses you. We can put the past behind us. No acknowledgement of the bus ticket. No mention of the duffel bag. No apology for silence. I tore it up in the break room while the espresso machine hissed behind me. Some doors stay closed, I told Leah. She nodded like she already knew. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. Because 15 years later, Frances walked into my office like she owned the air. And when security escorted her out, screaming about blood and entitlement, I should have known that wouldn't be the last move. People like her don't accept boundaries. They test them. And in part 3, I'm going to tell you how my father, the man who said nothing when I was thrown out, made his move next. How he tried to rewrite history, and how I finally learned the difference between compassion and self-betrayal. Because saying no to family doesn't make you cruel. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. I used to believe the hardest part of cutting off family was the moment you say no. I was wrong. The hardest part is what comes after, when they stop asking and start manipulating. After Frances was escorted out of my office, I didn't hear from either of them for almost 3 months. No calls, no emails, no surprise letters with shaky handwriting and selective memory. The silence felt suspicious, because silence, in my family, was never peace. It was strategy. The first sign came quietly. An email from an unfamiliar address landed in my inbox late one Thursday night, buried between client revisions and payroll notifications. Subject: just checking in. From Wayne Ellis. No greeting, no apology, just, "Hey kiddo, hope you're doing well. Thought I'd reach out and see how things are going." My stomach clenched like it always did when I saw his name. I stared at the screen for a full minute before closing my laptop. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another email. Saw your interview in the local paper. You always were smart. Your mom would have been proud. That line almost got me. Not because it was sincere, but because it was calculated. Frances used guilt like a hammer. My father used nostalgia like a scalpel. I still didn't respond. A week passed. Then came the voicemail. I recognized his voice immediately. Soft, tired, carrying the same defeated tone he used when he didn't want to fight, but wanted something anyway. "Bailey, it's Dad. I'm not calling about money. I just want to talk. You don't owe me anything. I just want my daughter back." That was when I realized something important. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to feel better. Because men like my father don't want accountability. They want absolution. I deleted the voicemail. That should have been the end. But then he showed up. Not at my office, at my home. It was a Sunday morning. I was on my balcony overlooking the ocean, coffee in hand, laptop open, trying, unsuccessfully, to take a day off. The security gate buzzed. "Ms. Ellis," the concierge said carefully. There's a man downstairs asking for you. Says he's your father. My chest tightened. I closed my eyes. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But there's something deeply ingrained in women like me, especially daughters like me, that whispers, maybe this time will be different. Send him up, I said. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped out alone. No Francis, no folder, no demands. Just my father in worn jeans and a faded flannel, hands stuffed into his pockets like a nervous teenager. He looked older, smaller. Guilt flickered across his face when he took in the view, the furniture, the life I'd built without him. Wow, he muttered. You did good. I didn't invite him to sit. What do you want, Dad? He winced. I wanted to see you. You wouldn't answer my calls. You didn't answer mine for 15 years, I said evenly. He nodded like he deserved that. I know. I messed up. That was it. No specifics, no accountability, just a vague confession that cost him nothing. We stood there in silence. Finally, he said, Frances shouldn't have come to your office like that. I almost laughed. She came because you sent her, I replied. His head snapped up. That's not fair. You knew, I said. You always know. He looked away. Silence again. And suddenly I saw him clearly, not as my father, but as a man who let someone else do his cruelty for him so he could pretend his hands were clean. I didn't come for money, he said quickly. I told her not to. Stop, I said. My voice didn't shake. That's the first honest thing you could do today. Stop lying. He swallowed. Then came the pivot, the thing I should have seen coming. I'm not asking for charity, he said. I just need help, temporarily. There it was. Frances's health hasn't been great, he continued. Medical bills, my knee's shot. I can't work like I used to. I folded my arms. And I thought maybe, just until we get back on our feet, you could help with some expenses. How much? I asked. He hesitated. Maybe 30,000, just to stabilize things. 30,000, not 150. He'd learned to negotiate. I laughed then, a short, humorless sound. You kicked me out with a bus ticket and $20, I said. And now you want 30,000 to stabilize? His face reddened. That was Frances. No, I corrected. That was you choosing silence. He bristled. You don't know how hard it was for me. I stepped closer. I know exactly how hard it was, because I lived the consequences. His eyes filled with tears. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost gave in. Because trauma bonds don't break cleanly. They stretch. They tug. They beg you to repeat the cycle just one more time. But then he said the thing that snapped me out of it. You turned out fine, he said quietly. So it couldn't have been that bad. There it was, the justification, the rewriting of history. My success twisted into proof that his neglect was harmless, that his silence didn't matter, that Frances's abuse was acceptable because I survived it. Something in me hardened. You don't get to use my survival as evidence that you didn't hurt me, I said. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. I'm not your emergency fund, I continued, and I'm not your redemption arc. He took a step back. So that's it? He asked. You're just done? I nodded. Yes. He shook his head slowly. You've changed. I smiled, not kindly. I had to. His jaw tightened. Your mother wouldn't want this, he said. That was his last card, and he played it poorly. My mother, I replied, voice cold, would never have let me be treated the way you allowed. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I'm asking you to leave, I said. He hesitated, then nodded, defeated. At the elevator, he turned back. If things get really bad, I hope you'll reconsider. The doors closed, and just like that, my father became a stranger. I thought that would be the end, but boundaries don't end battles. They expose how far someone is willing to go when they don't get what they want. 2 weeks later, my assistant forwarded me an email from a potential client. We heard some concerning things about your background. Before proceeding, we'd like clarification. Attached was a scanned document, a letter, signed by my father, claiming I had abandoned my parents, refused to help during a medical crisis, and built my success on family sacrifice. My hands went cold. He hadn't come to reconcile. He'd come to apply pressure, to smear me quietly, to punish me for saying no. I called my lawyer that afternoon, not emotional, not frantic, calm, prepared. Because the woman Frances tried to break at 17 didn't exist anymore. And in part 4, I'm going to tell you exactly how I responded, not with guilt, not with rage, but with strategy. How I protected my name, my business, and my peace. And how the people who tried to weaponize family against me learned that silence doesn't make you harmless. Sometimes it makes you legally accountable. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't cruelty. Its consequences. The moment my lawyer finished reading my father's letter, he leaned back in his chair and said something that finally made my shoulders drop. This is defamation, he said, and it's sloppy. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting from fear or guilt. I wasn't scrambling to prove I was good, generous, reasonable. I was done explaining myself to people who benefited from misunderstanding me. We documented everything. The office visit, the security footage, the restraining order against Frances, the voicemail from my father, the email smear sent to a potential client. Timeline, evidence, pattern. What my lawyer explained next was something I wish more women understood earlier in their lives. Boundaries aren't emotional. They're legal. We sent a cease and desist letter within 48 hours. Not angry, not dramatic. Precise. It outlined false statements, potential damages, and the next steps if contact continued. It also included one line that mattered most to me. Any further attempts to interfere with Ms. Ellis's business relationships will result in immediate legal action. My father responded exactly the way men like him always do when consequences appear. He panicked. He called. He emailed. He left messages that bounced between apology and accusation. I didn't mean it like that. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was just telling my side. You've always been dramatic. I didn't respond. Because this time, silence was mine. The legal process moved faster than I expected. The client didn't drop me. In fact, after reviewing the evidence, they signed a larger contract. Anyone who builds this kind of business without family support, the CEO said, that tells me everything I need to know. My father's letter backfired. Badly. But the real turning point came 3 weeks later. Frances violated the restraining order. Again. She confronted me outside a restaurant, grabbed my sleeve, screamed about blood and betrayal in front of witnesses. And this time, there was video. Clear, time-stamped, unarguable. She was arrested on the spot. No dramatics from me, no speeches, no satisfaction on my face, just relief. At the hearing, she pleaded no contest. The judge didn't look impressed. She was fined, placed on probation, and ordered to maintain distance from me, my home, my workplace, and any events I attended. Another violation meant jail time. My father didn't show up. Not to court, not to apologize, not to defend her. That was when the last piece finally fell into place. He hadn't been controlled by Frances. He had been comfortable letting her be the villain, because it meant he never had to choose, until the law chose for him. After that, everything went quiet. No more letters, no more emails, no more surprise visits. They sold the house in Jacksonville, moved, disappeared into their own consequences. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I slept through the night. I took weekends off. I stopped apologizing for needing rest. Something shifted inside me, not all at once, but permanently. I realized I had built my entire success on one false belief, that if I stopped giving, I would lose love. But the truth was harder and more freeing. The people who only love you when you give aren't loving you. They're using you. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was tired of carrying survival strategies into a life that no longer required them. I learned how to rest without guilt, how to say no without explanation, how to receive without immediately offering something back. My business didn't suffer. It grew healthier. So did I. Today, my office still overlooks the ocean. The espresso machine still hums. The team still laughs too loud during breaks. But the biggest difference isn't what I built. It's what I no longer tolerate. I don't negotiate my worth. I don't confuse blood with loyalty. I don't prove my value through exhaustion. And when women ask me how I did it, how I walked away from a family that felt entitled to my life, I tell them this: you are not cruel for choosing yourself. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. And you do not owe anyone access to the woman you fought to become. If someone discarded you when you were vulnerable, they don't get to reclaim you when you're thriving. That's not revenge. That's self-respect. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all.